We're coming and going. I see that we are live. Are we live? Yes. I'm not supposed to do the introduction. They're starting.
Okay, we're live, Victor, but that's only so that I can get the link and share it with everyone so that they can join this. So we are live, but I just had to get this to go live in order to get the link.
Tarin, my machine is going crazy. I'm going to restart. I'm not speaking first anyways, right?
Okay. No, you are not. Hi, everyone. I'm actually surprised you all were able to get into Zoom. Hi, Vishwa.
Hi, Taran.
All right. Well, we had a last minute scramble here. I admit I have never had any problem with Zoom, but we were able to quickly switch over here to StreamYard. So let's give everyone just a few minutes to make the transition. We are live right now, but the only people that have the link are the people from the meetup and anyone who might see it on our channel. So, so everyone just bear with us for a few minutes. And if you want to post in the chat, please, that's the only way that we know you're watching. So if you were over on Zoom and you've transferred over and are watching us now, please let us know and that'll indicate to us that we can get started also. Okay, excuse me as I'm going back and forth and talking to everyone in the Zoom room and then talking to everyone here. So it looks like we do have a couple people who have switched over from Zoom. I just re-added the link over there. So they should be joining in a moment as well. And now I'm going to go update the meetup groups. Let's see. Sorry for all this trouble, everyone. I blame it on Zoom. And if you have switched over from Zoom, please add a little note in the chat to let us know that you're here, and then we'll know whether we can get started. I'm going to plan on waiting just one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and get started. I know we're 7 minutes past the hour already, so we don't want to waste your time. We appreciate you working with us.
Hi, Taryn. I'm just going to try sharing my screen. Just let me know if you can see it. Can you see it?
Yes, I can. So I have control to kind of, when you do that option, to share your screen for you on my end. So we should be good, but we can go ahead and leave it up like this because you are our first presentation today. And looks like we had 3 more people comment that they made it over from Zoom. So that's good news. So the first, we'll go ahead and do some intros and get started. I don't want anyone to be waiting for too long. So we have today with us Viswa as well as Victor Farsik. Victor is also working on transitioning over because Zoom also crashed his machine. So he's restarting his computer and he'll be back on in a minute. But thank you all so much for working with us. We haven't had a virtual meetup in a long time now, and this threw us a curveball today, but we appreciate you being cooperative with us and moving on over. We have 2 awesome talks today, and the first one is from Viswa. Of course, I mean, this is virtual. It's not as great as having a meetup in person and enjoying, you know, food together and networking, but I encourage you to use the chat and network. If you guys have any job openings at your companies, anything like that, please add them to the chat over here now and let people know. Or if you have any announcements, anything coming up. Something major coming up is KubeCon, actually. And I just found out from StackRox that they will be giving away 3 KubeCon North America passes today. So based on your registration over from Zoom, I'm going to go pull that, and at the end of today, we're going to give away those 3 KubeCon passes and a $100 Amazon gift card. So we're going to sweeten the pot a little bit. Thanks for switching things up on us today and following us to YouTube Live. So I will type all of that in the chat as well. But since we're a few minutes late here, let's go ahead and get started. Are you ready with your presentation, Viswa? You ready to go?
Yeah, I can go. You can hear me okay?
I can hear you great. Can everyone hear Viswa well? Go ahead and type in the chat.
All right, I'm assuming if you can hear me, everybody can. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So hi everyone, thanks for coming to our meetup and bearing with our technical difficulties. My name is Viswa. I'm an engineer at StackRox, and today I'm going to be talking to you about KubeLinter, a new open source tool that we've built at StackRox. So quick overview of StackRox before jumping into things. If you haven't heard about us already, we are a Kubernetes security company. So we build an industry-first Kubernetes native security product. But in today's talk, I'm going to be focusing on KubeLinter, which is an open source tool that we built, like I said. So let's get started. So the agenda today, just to give you a quick idea of what I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be telling you a little bit about what is KubeLinter, what problem does it solve. I'll go into a quick demo, and then I can tell you how you can get involved with KubeLinter, how you can use it, and where you can get started. And I'll leave some time at the end for questions, but feel free to interrupt me, or I don't know if you can interrupt me on this platform, but maybe you can, if you just ask questions on the chat, it's fine. I'm monitoring that as well. All right, so let me get started. So the problem that KubeLinter is solving is that Kubernetes YAML files are hard to configure because they have a lot of knobs and dials, and even when you get things up and running, you realize that you're not actually ready to run things in production because the defaults are often geared towards helping you get up and running, or sometimes towards maintaining backward compatibility with earlier versions of Kubernetes that did not have certain security features. And so you find configuring YAML files and deploying your applications into Kubernetes can be pretty challenging. And KubeLinter aims to help part of this problem. So basically, it's an open source tool to run static checks against Kubernetes YAML files and Helm charts. So here's a quick overview of where we see KubeLinter fitting into the Kubernetes security picture. And I'll be talking about this in reference to what we do with the rest of our product at StackRox. So let's say you have your Kubernetes cluster running a bunch of applications. Now, what we do in our commercial product is we run on this cluster, we analyze the configurations of these applications and tell you things like, oh, this app is missing a required label, or this app is running as privileged. So we help you like analyze the configurations of the things that are actually running. Now, where KubeLinter comes into the picture is if you or your team uses a configuration as code approach. So you actually configure your applications using YAML files or Helm charts that are checked into a version control system, say GitHub, Bitbucket, or GitLab, and then deployed using a CI/CD system. Then every application that's in your cluster can be traced back to some YAML file or Helm chart that is checked into a source code repo. Now, this obviously lets you take advantages of all the things that you know and are used to with code. So, and I know today the second talk is going to dive into this a lot deeper, which is you can make sure that everything is peer reviewed, you can track changes, you can easily revert, things like that. Now, the other thing that we do with code is linting. And so KubeLinter tries to do the same things that we do on running deployments on the actual configurations of the application itself. So we run on these YAML files and tell you, okay, you're missing a required label, or you're privileged, or anything else that we can say just based on the configuration itself. So now I'm going to go switch tracks and do a brief demo of KubeLinter. So I'm going to show you how you run KubeLinter, how you can remediate violations, how you can, in some cases, ignore specific violations it found because you want to have special cases, how you can configure your custom checks, how you can lint Helm charts and not just Kubernetes YAML files, and how you can integrate it into a CI system. So I'm going to switch tracks to the demo. Hopefully you all can still see my new screen. I assume you can.
Yes, we can still see it. It looks great.
All right, perfect. Thanks, Taryn. So just for the purpose of the demo, I have 3 YAML files, which I'm going to be running my test on. And I have KubeLinter installed. So you can see, I have KubeLinter. It's installed, so I can just invoke it. And then I'm running it on these 3 YAML files, which are in this directory. All of them are open in the window on the right. So you can see there's a main deployment.yaml, which has a deployment. There's a main-service.yaml, which has a service. And then there's an unmaintained-deployment.yaml, which has another deployment, as you can see here. So now the way I invoke KubeLinter is I just run KubeLinter lint and then pass it a list of files or directories. In this case, I just want to lint the current directory. So I could either do star or dot. I'm just going to do dot here. And you can see that it quickly analyzes these files and prints some output based on what it finds. So let me go over like these violations that it's found 7 different lint errors, and we'll go over how to rectify some of them, how to ignore some of them, and how you make sense of them. So the first thing it's found is in main deployment.yaml, and it's saying that the object is a deployment in namespace production called main. So you can see that all matches what you see in the YAML. And it's saying that the container Nginx does not have a read-only root file system. And this is the violation that it finds. And in the remediation field, it tells you how you can fix this problem. So in this case, it's just set read-only root file system to true in your container security context. So I'm going to try doing that. And I'm going to just copy the field name from the remediation and then set it to true. And then when I rerun KubeLinter lint dot, you can see now there's only 6 lint errors, and that specific lint error has gone. So this is kind of the flow of how I, as a developer, can use KubeLinter to help me craft the right YAML files on my machine. Another one, which I'm going to look at in the service, is it's saying that no pods are found matching the service labels. So then if you look here, you see that the service is selecting pods with the label app set to main with 2 ends, whereas the actual pod has labels app with main with just 1 end. So this is quite likely a typo, and this is something you often run into when working with Kubernetes, where you have all these cross references and you have to make sure that they are intact. And so KubeLinter, under normal circumstances, you would like deploy this and then wonder why your pod nothing is able to talk to this pod, and it turns out it'll be because the service is misconfigured. But with KubeLinter, you kind of catch this ahead of time. So I'm going to fix this by just removing the second end, fixing the typo. And now when I rerun, you can see there's only 5 lint errors left. Now let's go to the ones in the unmaintained deployment. So here, let's say that this is not a deployment I maintain. And in this case, I don't really want to fix all these errors because all these actions have some side effects, and I'm not comfortable making those with this deployment. At the same time, I do want to run KubeLinter and have a way to tell it to ignore these checks. So KubeLinter has that built in, and the way it works is you just add an annotation, like so. So the annotation is kubelinter.io/ignore all. That's the key. And as the value, you say why you're ignoring these. So in this case, you just say this deployment is no longer maintained. So that if someone is wondering why you chose to do this, that is documented. Sorry, just give me a second. Yeah, sorry. I turns out I had missed the second S in annotations. And so now when I run this, you can see that I only see 1 lint error because everything from unmaintained deployment has been ignored. Now, the last check here is interesting because it's in the main deployment. And this is a deployment that I actually care about. So I don't want to do what I did here and ignore all lint checks on this deployment, but I do want to run this deployment as privileged because let's say it just needs privileges for some reason. In this case, KubeLinter has a way for you to do that as well. And the way you can do that is you can add a check like this. You can add an annotation like this. So ignore check.kubelinter.io / and then you add the name of the check, which is helpfully presented here. And then you can say, this deployment needs privileges because it, let's say, accesses the kernel, which is one common reason that things need privileges. Now, when you run, you see that it's saying no lint errors are found and that you can, it's passing the build. And when you look at the exit code, you can see that it's returning an exit code of 0. So this is like how you would work through the errors that KubeLinter finds, fix them, and eventually get to a place where you're happy with the contents of your YAML files. So in this case, I've used KubeLinter without any arguments. KubeLinter also has support for custom checks. So the way we currently support that is through a config file. And I'm here, in this case, I'm going to go over a brief example of how you would configure a custom file, or a custom check. So let me try to switch tabs to Chrome. So if you look at our documentation, you can see that KubeLinter has a bunch of check templates, which this is the way we allow people to configure custom checks. And one of the example check templates we have is required annotation. So what we do in this specific check template is you can flag objects that don't carry at least one annotation matching the provided patterns. So what this allows you to do is to say that everything deployed into my cluster must have an annotation that matches a certain form. And it tells you how to use that annotation. And so if I go back to the terminal, the way I would use this annotation is I would write a custom check. And again, I know I'm glossing over some of the details here, but it's explained in more detail in our documentation. So I give the check a name. So in this case, I'm going to say required annotation team, because what I want is I want all my objects to have an annotation where the key is set to team. The template is what you have to get from here, which is the
Hi,
key.
Vishwa. I'm sorry to interrupt. A couple people have commented that it's hard to see the text. When you're in the code, can you zoom in on your screen a little bit more?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. Yeah. Right. Made that bigger. Thank you for letting me know. And made this bigger as well. Hopefully that's better. If it's not, I'm just feel free to let me know again, Taryn. So the required annotation is the key. So that's just telling you what template you're using. And the parameters here for the required annotation are the first parameter is the key of the annotation, and this is of type string. And in this case, that's the only one we need, because all I'm requiring is that every object has an annotation where the key is team. So if I say params key team, and then I say remediation, add a team annotation to your object. Now, if I save this, so I've updated the config. Now I'm going to rerun KubeLinter on the current directory, but pass it the config. So I've just passed it with the -- config flag. And you can see now that the new check that we've configured is being run, and it's telling you that in your main service, no annotation is found matching team equals any, which is saying that no annotation is found where the key is team and the value is whatever you want. So in this case, I'm going to say this. I'm going to add. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong place. I'm going to add an annotation saying that the team that's maintaining this is main. And so this lets you enforce that everything that's deployed has an annotation that that like indicates which team is responsible for maintaining it. And now when I rerun, you can see that there are no lint errors found because we fixed this specific check. I also wanted to show you, sorry for the switches, how we run KubeLinter on Helm Charts. So far, I've shown you how you do it on like YAML files, fully rendered. But we also support running it on Helm Charts. So here I have this GitHub repo Helm/charts, which has literally like every public Helm chart that that is there on Helm. And so you can see like a list of all of them. So I'm just going to pick something random, like say Telegraph. So you can see if I go to Telegraph, again, maybe I should zoom in here. So this is a Helm chart. It has a values.yaml, a chart.yaml, and like all these templates. And I can run KubeLinter on this as well. So all I have to do is say KubeLinter lint telegraph. And you can see that it automatically detects that it's a Helm chart, renders it into the final YAML files using the values, and then actually runs a bunch of checks on it. So you see output very similar to what you would see if you for the plain vanilla kube YAML files. And the reason we wanted to support this is because this is how people actually store their configurations most often in practice. I also wanted to go over how you would integrate it into a CI system. So here I have a PR just for a demo where I've actually checked in the same YAML files that you just saw into a PR. And then I have a GitHub action, which is running KubeLinter on the code in the repo. And you can see that it's giving you very similar output to what you just saw, telling you how many errors it found. And it fails with an exit code. So you can, if you have errors, it will fail your build, and you get this, red cross here. And even over here, thanks to GitHub's UI, you can see that it's failing and that you can go into the details. So that's how you would use KubeLinter in a CI system. So that's all I had for the demo. So let me just wrap up by telling you where you can find KubeLinter. So you already saw me go here, but you can find it at kubelinter.io or github.com/StackRox/kube-linter. So we actually just launched it a little over 2 weeks ago now, but we've seen pretty good community traction so far, over 600 stars, which has been pretty exciting to see. We've had people try it out, file issues with suggestions and bugs they've seen, and we've even had people kind enough to contribute their own PRs to our code as well. And so so we are super encouraging of that. We are really looking for users, looking for community feedback, and we welcome your issues, your feature requests, any bugs you find, as well as pull requests. And we're also going to be at KubeCon. So we will be doing a slightly longer talk about KubeLinter at KubeCon as well. And if you do attend KubeCon, which you can, if you don't have your tickets already, hopefully you get one of the 3 that we're giving to attendees of this meetup. You can visit the StackRox booth at KubeCon to learn more about both KubeLinter and about StackRox. And as always, feel free to file issues and things like that. So that's all I had, and I'm happy to take questions. All right. So does it work with Kustomize? That I actually am not too familiar with Kustomize myself, but this is something that someone else brought up a week ago as well. I haven't tried it out, but it's on the list, and if there's interest in it, it's definitely something we would consider implementing. But right now, I have not tried it out yet, mainly because I don't personally have experience with it. If anyone else has, thanks Sundar for your question. If anyone else has questions, feel free to enter them in the chat, and I can see them.
Let's see. Looks like we got one more.
Yeah, what are some of the limitations we identify? So we have a bunch of built-in checks. I think the last time I checked, it was about 20, if I'm not wrong. So you can see them in our documentation. So here are some of them. So for example, so some of them are things that you saw where we tell you that your services selector correctly matches the one on one of your deployments. Then we encourage you to create a dedicated service account for your pod. We tell you don't mount secrets as environment variables. Instead, use a secret key ref. We tell you not to use deprecated API versions. We tell you to use a liveness probe and readiness probe, run with a read-only root file system. Don't run your container with privilege, run as a non-root user. So things like that. I'm not going to go into every single one, but the full list is on our documentation. Not all the checks are enabled by default. That's something you configure through the configuration, like I showed you in the demo. The checks that are enabled by default are things that we think are pretty sensible defaults that everyone should want to use, but we also did not want to be too noisy. And so we've erred on the side of not making everything on by default. I hope that answers your question. But feel free to send a follow-up, and if it doesn't. Do we have any plan to IDE integration? Yes, that's definitely on the roadmap. We have an issue for that. We haven't done it yet. I think the first one we'll target is VS Code. We're also looking into an integration with Lens, which is this open source IDE for Kubernetes, which helps you, view like your running deployments and stuff in an IDE. If you haven't used Lens, I would recommend checking that out as well. But that's the other thing we would integrate with first, and then it depends on what requests we receive. But that's the plan. Thanks, Dylan, for your question.
Just kidding, my mic was muted. Thank you so much for your presentation. Looks like we have maybe a couple more questions or comments here. Let's just look at these real quick. Oh, just saying that the VS Code integration would be great. I'll go also.
Yeah, I have not checked out K9S, Oliver, or heard of it, but I will make a note of it.
Do you mean Kubernetes, like with an 8? What's K9S? I'm used to seeing Kubernetes shortened like K8S. I'm not technical here. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm assuming, I have not heard of this, but I'm assuming it's a dashboard tool or of some kind. But I'll check it out. I'll add it to my notes.
And here's one more question.
Yeah, thanks Akshay for your question. We've got more requests so far for VS Code, so that's what we were going to do first. But we're not going to stop there for sure. So we would consider IDEA, IntelliJ and the whole family. So not just IntelliJ, but everything JetBrains makes. I think they have a unified API, so that would be a thing that we would do.
Yeah, Oliver says to check out K9s, that it's like Lens, but terminal based.
Got it. Thanks, Oliver.
Okay, well, if that's all the questions for Vishwa, then we'll get ready for our next presentation. If you still have a question, though, feel free and enter it. We can jump right back in. So I'm going to bring our next presenter to the stream.
Hey.
Victor. Hey, Victor. How's it going?
Always good.
Excellent. Well, yeah, Vishwa, thank you so much for your presentation. We really appreciate it. And if you want to pop back in at the end or anything, you're welcome to. But I will hand it over to Victor from here if you want to share your screen, Victor. Or actually, I can let you go full screen, right? Because you have a very
there you go. I have
very fancy green screen for you. Yeah,
exactly.
Sounds good. Here you go.
Right. Thanks, Taryn.
There we are. Okay. So what I will talk about today is primarily GitOps, very quick introduction what it is, and then combine it with continuous delivery and use quite a few tools for that. So let's start with GitOps. I will not bore you with details because I want to jump into the demo as fast as I can. GitOps is about acknowledging that everything is defined as code. That's it. That's what GitOps is. And the few other things just follow up from that, few other principles. If everything is defined as code, all the code is stored in Git because that's the only version control we use today. And that means that everything is in Git. Automatically, that means that Git defines the desired state of everything we have. And then we have some processes happening somewhere, running somewhere, that are converging that desired state, our desires stored in Git, and converging them into the actual state. So I will today use Argo CD to show you how part of what some of the things we can do with GitOps. And since I'm talking about the full life cycle of application, I will inject those principles into continuous delivery pipeline. As I said before, I will use Argo CD for GitOps part of deployments. I will use CodeFresh pipelines to define all the steps that are required in the process. And finally, we'll use GitHub today. Everything applies equally to any other Git provider, doesn't matter. So I will be talking about how to manage the full life cycle of applications, in this case, using GitOps combined with CD and what's not. So let me show you first. Yeah, I forgot almost. This is me. My name is Viktor Farsik. I'm, what am I? Yeah, Principal DevOps Architect, I think, and in Codefresh. If you're not familiar with Codefresh, codefresh.io. Tarin will post a link probably somewhere. Go and check it out. It's cool. I wouldn't be working there if it's not. Anyways, so that's about me. Now, let me show you, let me draw you first. What am I going to do? So, few assumptions first. I have a cluster, right? Everybody has a cluster. Everything is happening in clusters. And today I will be using Kubernetes as my cluster. Now, there are a few rules. This is me, this guy over here, right? I nor anybody else has the ability to access the cluster. I will not allow access to anybody because there is no need for that. The reason why there is no need to access the cluster is because I will have a couple of Git repositories. I will call it environment repos, repo. I might have a few of them. And those environment repositories will define the state, what I want to have in the cluster. Over here, I already have a cluster with Argo CD. And Argo CD, what it does is it monitors specified Git repositories, and whatever is specified there, it will be applied in a cluster. It will always be the same, or most of the time. Now, since we are talking really about applications, I will have one or more application repos. Now, if you ignore all that, what do I do when I wear a hat of a developer? When I start working on a new feature, I create a pull request, a PR in my Git repository. This is me doing a PR. Now, whenever I create a PR, I wouldn't be creating a pull request if I wouldn't want something to be built, something to be reviewed, something to be tested, and so on and so forth. That's why we create pull requests. We want to test features before going live. We want to allow other coworkers to review them, and so on and so forth. And for that to work, I need every single pull request deployed somewhere in my cluster. So I need that pull request running somewhere in my cluster. If I would have 2 pull requests, I would need that deployed as well. If I close a pull request, I need that application that is deployed as part of the pull request to be removed from the cluster. In other words, I need as many variations of my application running as I have open pull requests, and I don't need them running longer than necessary. All that means that if I'm following GitOps principles, that since this repository or set of repositories are always defining what is in a cluster, and I have no access, I cannot install anything in a cluster. Even though I will be using Codefresh pipelines, the same rule apply. Codefresh also, or any other similar tool, also shouldn't be able to access the cluster. The only way to deploy something to the cluster is by changing something in Git and having a process, in this case Argo CD, monitoring those changes and applying them. All that means that when I create a pull request, the only solution to that is that pull request should trigger a pipeline. Pipeline should run, build the images, build binaries, build the images, create releases, do whatever needs to be done. And when the moment comes to deploy something, the pipeline has to go to the Git repository, change the contents of the Git repository, and then let Argo CD deploy that something. Similarly, when let's say that all those are preview or pull request temporary environments, maybe I have in that cluster or a different cluster production. And in that case, when I merge pull request to the master branch, that should also trigger a pipeline, and that pipeline should also change something in the Git repository, in a, let's say, a dedicated Git repository that defines production. So the flow is always the same. I, as a developer, I'm interacting with Git. I'm pushing my changes to Git. Git is triggering some processes that do not have direct access to the cluster. Instead, those processes need ultimately to push changes to Git repositories so that those changes, those desired states, are converged into the actual state. Okay, that's the idea. If you have any questions, interrupt me at any moment. I prefer answering questions than raving like a lunatic here. But until you do, let me do a quick demo. This is me. And show you how all that works in practice. You saw at Vifarsik. If you want to contact me, there's my nick in what is it, in Twitter? Yes, and I will remove it now. More space for the terminal, and let's do a demo. Let me show you how all that looks like. So I'm going to the directory DevOps Toolkit. This is my application. This is where my local copy of the repository of one of my applications. And I am now going to simulate that I'm a developer, right? What do developers do first whenever they start working on something new? The first thing every single developer does is check out a new branch, right? Check out -b pull request, let's say 1. I'm not going to do anything, any of the things that every single developer is not doing every single day. I will not introduce you any new steps in your lives. I will just show you some magic happening in the background. So I am now a developer. I will simulate that I'm writing some code by modifying README. I'm going to remove the README and say this is silly. Right? I'm just simulating that I'm making changes to my source code and saving you from watching me write the real code. So let's say that I'm finished working on my feature. What do I do next as a developer? I'm going to add those things. I'm going to make a commit. This is a silly commit. Always write a message, and I'm going to push that to the upstream. What was it? Peer 1. No, what was it then? Git push, upstream origin. Look at me, forgetting things. So I created a new branch. I worked. Now I think that I'm finished with my work, and I'm ready to propose my changes to be delivered to production by creating a pull request. So I'm going to create a pull request. I like using terminal. Imagine if you don't like terminals, you can do the same thing from GitHub UI or from wherever. I'm just freak from a terminal. So I'm going to create a pull request from terminal. Repo is org DevOps Toolkit. Title is I hate titles. And body is I will never tell. Something, doesn't matter. Does matter that I just created a pull request. There is a new pull request of my fancy feature. Now I'm going to store that pull request number in a variable just for later. So far, that's what I did. Now, let me show you what happened when I created the pull request. And for that, I'm going to go to Codefresh. Here we are, Codefresh. Because I'm using Codefresh pipelines today. Come on. Okay. Oh, yeah, I have to restart the machine, so I'm not logged in. I'm going to log in quickly. And here are my builds. And come on. And my pipeline is running, right? This is a typical pipeline, similar pipelines that you're having. I'm cloning the repository. By the way, it is slow lately. I think that we're having an outage across the globe, not only us, but many. Soon the pipeline will run. And when it runs, what it will do is that it will do first the typical things. It is cloning the repository of my application. It is building the binaries. I'm using a simple Hugo application. It will build a container image. It will enrich image. It will attach pull request information to image, and attach Jira issues if I have. Those are not important. The steps that matter, the steps that you might not be used to, are those. And what those 3 steps on the right side do, I don't know how to remove myself, there we go, is I will clone a repository that defines my pull requests, a cluster where pull requests are running. Then it will add additional information about the pull request in a local copy of that repo, and then it will push changes back to the repository. And this might sound silly, but this is a huge difference compared to how we do things normally, right? So this pipeline is not going to deploy anything. It does not even have access to the cluster. Neither me nor my pipelines have access to the cluster. All that they're doing is the typical stuff plus modifying a Git repository. And if I go here, let me show you actually what is happening. If I go to the repo of Argo CD previews, this is the repository that defines my part of my cluster. If I go to this directory here, templates, you see this file? This was just added a second ago. This was my pipeline adding this file saying, hey, somebody would like to have this thing running in the preview environment. And this thing is a reference to the image, some Helm values being overwritten, a reference to the directory where the complete definition, sorry, not directory, repository of the application where everything is defined, plus few values that I'm overwriting. The most important one is this tag. Now, all that being said, the part that really matters is that soon I should have it running in my cluster. And let's take a look. kubectl get ns, namespaces. And look at this namespace. You need to trust me, I didn't show you this. This namespace did not exist a few seconds ago. Actually, see here, 32 seconds ago, did not exist. It was created. And if I show you PR DevOps Toolkit 1, get pods, you can see that my application is now running as a result of me creating a pull request. The only thing I did so far actually is create a pull request. Everything else is just happening, and it's fully GitOps enabled. Everything is stored in Git repositories. You can track what's going on. You can see what is and what isn't, and so on and so forth. Now, so my application is running. Let me see actually if I can open the application and show you that it is really running. How can I do that? Yes. Let me see. Get ingresses. This is the address through which I should be able to access my application. And if I go here, it is deployed. Here's the app. And it has a unique namespace, unique address, auto-generated, simply because every single pull request needs to have a unique namespace, unique address, everything unique, because there can be anything between 0 and 1 million pull requests open at any given moment. So I'm still, the only thing I really did apart from showing you is create a pull request. Now let me go back to my repository. Actually, not back. Let me open my repository for the first time. And this is the repository. This is the pull request I created. All right. I hate titles. Question. Oliver, what if your deployment contains several services? Here you just modify one of them. How will the other ones get installed? Good question. Depends. There are a couple of... it really depends on how you Actually, let me sign in. I restarted my computer. I need to sign in. That depends really how you organize yourself. One option could be, actually, let me just authenticate 352 264. Okay. You can have those additional services as dependencies of your application, for example. And if that's the case, and if you want to deploy them together with that application, let me show you one thing that I didn't show in advance. And that is basically when this reference to the pull request and the tag and what's not, and this repository was added to the Git environment repo. What the pipeline did is that it took this file preview that defines everything, how to reference my application. This file could contain all the dependencies as well. It could have 5 dependencies there, and then that's what it would be, right? Basically, what we are doing, if I go back to repository here, what we are doing is giving Argo CD references to applications by giving references to Git repositories where application is stored, and add values that we want to, default values that we want to overwrite. There is more stuff going on here, but this is basically the essence, the base. And now you could just as well reference 5 different applications if you would need 5 applications deployed as a result of pull request. The application in question and the dependencies, for example, it could be 4 dependencies. You're in control what goes where. We are making sure that you have means to actually to make the flow of the pieces that you need go in the right direction, depending on what is going on, like whether it's a pull request or this or that. I hope that this answers your question. If it doesn't, follow-up question or any other question, I'm going to answer them all if I know the answer. Anyways, where is the repo? Yes. Now, let's say that, where was I? Pull request, going back to pull request. Here is the pull request. If I say, no, this is a horrible idea, you should never have done this, I'm going to close pull request. You should know probably, you can probably guess what will happen. I close the pull request, a pipeline should be triggered. Here we are. That will do similar things. Actually, opposite of similar things. I don't have explanation why it's so slow. Anyways, while waiting for pipeline to do, what the pipeline will do is, in this case, because it was triggered by a by the event of closing the PR, it will remove the definition of that application from the repository, and then Argo CD will notice the removal and prune it from the cluster. Oliver, but how does it know what version to use for dependencies? One method, for example, can be that you define all those dependencies in the repository of the application and say, hey, this is the dependency A version XYZ, dependency B version X, anything else. And as long as you know which dependencies to define, then it will pick it up. That would be one method, assuming that you know the dependencies in advance. Alternative could be to always go with the head of the dependencies, which is a bad idea, but I've seen people doing that. It really depends whether you want to be explicit or no. If you're explicit, then in the repository of your application, you define the list of dependencies, references to the repositories where they're stored. Actually, let me go back here, right? Here you see that I'm overwriting the tag by being explicit which version of my application I want. And you could overwrite you could be explicit which tags of the dependencies you want as well. And with the difference is that for this application, I used the tag that was built by the pipeline, but in case of dependencies, they're very often predefined in advance. I hope that answers your question. If it doesn't, follow up and I'll go further. Where was I? Pipeline. Oh, pipeline is still initializing. As I said before, we are having an outage. Actually, I think that AWS is having an outage and everything today is slow. First Zoom, now CodeFresh, worldwide outage. So ask more questions while we're waiting for this to start. I cannot while I'm here, I cannot fix the outage, so I need to rely on others to fix it for me. Any other questions? Give me opportunity to speak about something while waiting for this to start. Okay, I see that you're either shy or Tarin is not seeing your comments, one of the two things. Now, how do you manage external services like, say, AWS RDS instance needed? So external services, they started. External services, you still manage them usually with something like Terraform, right? You don't manage them as Kubernetes definitions, not like Helm charts and what's or not. And then the same logic would apply, except that you wouldn't use Argo CD definitions and store them in Git. You would use Terraform or whatever else you're using to manage your services as the definitions for every single instance of your application that you're deploying. And the same logic applies. You change it in Git, and then there is a process somewhere that is converging those changes into reality. With the difference that when we are talking about external services, you cannot avoid having access to those services, unlike with internal clusters where you can do that. Okay, the pipeline finished. Keep coming with questions. Let's see what is happening in my cluster. If I list the pods, that pull request is still running. Here you can see it running. And then let's wait a second more, still running. Still running. It will disappear very, very soon. CAWS. Okay, and now it's not running anymore. Argo CD detected that the definition was removed from Git. And we can see that here, if you see where was I? Here in the repository defines my cluster. The file that was here before was removed. Simply, the event was triggered by GitHub. Pull request closed. Event went to CodeFresh. CodeFresh did what needs to be done. In this case, remove the file, and then Argo CD made sure that the new desired state is converged. In this case, by pruning it. Now, one more thing. Actually, I'm almost getting ready to deploy to production. Let me reopen the pull request. And you already know what will happen when we reopen the pull request. The action is the same as when pull request was created. The pipeline will be executed. Here we are. Actually, let me open it in a new tab. Here we are. The pipeline will be executed. As I said before, it is slow today, but eventually it will add that pull request to the Git repository. The reference to the Git repository Argo CD will find out a new change, and it will be redeployed to the same namespace. So here, instead of seeing nothing, you will see that pod again. And then I'm going to speed up because okay, here it is. And a few moments later, it will be running. Now I'm going to wait until the image is built. I don't need to wait for all, only until image is built, simply because after that I can merge it to the main line and finish this story. And after I merge it to the main line, I want it deployed to production. Oliver says, since Argo CD creates the namespace, deploys the microservices, etc., the Argo CD configuration must define Terraform config file too, and Argo CD should run it. Not really, because Argo CD is focused only and exclusively to deployments inside Kubernetes clusters. So if you want to manage the service outside, fully or partly outside the Kubernetes cluster, the same principles apply, but it's not Terraform anymore. Your most likely process would be, you would still use a pipeline. Think of pipelines as being orchestrators of everything. And then that pipeline would run equivalent of Terraform apply that would do whatever needs to be done outside of your cluster. But Argo CD simply doesn't support Terraform, doesn't support anything that is not Kubernetes only, meaning it supports Helm, it supports Customize, it supports JSONnet, or whichever other formats we have in Kubernetes, but nothing outside of the Kubernetes. The principles are the same, but the tools are different. So it's not Argo CD anymore. Okay, so going back to my pull request. Here is my pull request. The pipeline is still running. I will not wait for that. I will merge that pull request. Now, by merging pull request, I'm making assumption, and that really depends from one case to another about the process. And in this specific case, for this situation, and yours might be different, my process is that when I merge a pull request to the main line, to the master branch of an application, it should be deployed to production. Me merging something to the main line is equivalent to me giving approval of deploying something to production. There can be other processes. It really depends from one case to another. But in today, the process is basically, think of it as continuous deployment or continuous delivery, depends how you define them. With me having right now, I have a production-ready release, and I will release it, deploy to production by merging to the main line of that application. And that should initiate the process again. Now, this process is still very similar. If I go to builds, if you should see 2 new builds now. One, soon there will be another one. They will be built for closing the pull request, or maybe that already finished, and built for merging the pull request, because merging is actually 2 actions at once. And this is following the same, almost the same pattern. Get the repository. There is nothing to build. I'm not building a new image because it would be pointless to build a new image. I'm merging to the mainline means that I want the same image that was already tested as part of releasing it as a preview environment, as a pull request. And the real action is here in those 2 guys. It will push it to the repository of production that defines production. And let me show you that one right away. DevOps Paradox, Argo CD production. This is the repository defines my production cluster. And this is what is currently running in production. It is running the latest version of my application. That's a horrible practice. I don't recommend anybody to run latest. It will not exist for long. But what the pipeline is doing, it actually just happened while I'm creating. Pipeline created a pull request instead of pushing directly to the master branch. It could have pushed directly, but in this case, I'm imagining that I want a pull request so that somebody can go here and say, okay, so somebody, who is that? This guy, Viktor Farsik, just suggested that we should deploy something new or upgrade something in production. Let me see what it is. And then me, as having a different role, would go through the changes. Okay, so those are all the changes. Most of them are cosmetic. The only change that really matters is that Victor just suggested that we don't run the latest release, the latest tag in production, that we run the tag called B268, etc., etc. and let's say that I agree with that change, and I will merge this. This is now happening in the repository that defines production. This is not application anymore. This is not previews anymore. This is production. I'm going to merge this. This, unlike other things, will not trigger any pipeline because I did not define any specific steps. There is no additional testing in this case. There could be, there should be, or anything like that. It's just merging. And Argo CD should detect that and do something about it. And I can show you that kubectl -n production get, let's say, get pods. Right now, I'm running 2 applications in production, and one is running already for 25 seconds. And if I describe that pod, describe pod, here we are, it should show me here. This is already a new version of my application running in production. This is the same version, same release, same tag that was built when I created the pull request. And the whole process was initiated by me merging the pull request of the application repo, which created another pull request to the repository of production. I approved it and lived happily ever after. Now, what else? Yeah, one more thing. Now, when we are already that subject, if you need additional information, let me see. I'm not sure whether I set it up in advance. If I go back to CodeFresh, and if I'm interested in what is running, what is happening with the application DevOps Toolkit in production, I can go here. Okay, actually, I should have been able. Yeah, I can see that, ignore the first entry. This is me messing up with it before. I can see that it was deployed 2 times. I can see that this is the commit that started all this. This is now live in production. This is the commit that initiated the change. This is who did it. There are no Jira issues associated with it. There could have been. This is the pipeline that did the work. This is the specific build. Those are all the links. And finally, this is the image and the tag that is currently running in production. Right now, you need to imagine that this dashboard would be much richer and what's not if I did anything but a silly demo. But basically, you have additional layer of observability into what is happening with your applications, combined with your issues, your pull requests, your commits, Argo CD specific information, and so on and so forth. Let me see. And if you want to see things in Argo as well, this is Argo CD UI that shows when it was last synchronized, what is running, and so on and so forth. That's my very, very quick. I had a similar subject a few days ago, and then I had too much material I couldn't finish on time. Now I reduced the material and I finished too early. So we have plenty of time for conversation, I think. Ask questions. Let me know what else can I show you, or which questions do you have? Do you understand what GitOps is and how those principles apply, and so on and so forth? There I am.
Victor is here to answer all of your questions. Doesn't just have to be what you just talked about, right? It can be anything.
Anything. What I had for breakfast. If you're interested, I'm going to tell you even that. Yes.
So it does take just a couple seconds for your questions to come through to us on our streaming platform. So be patient, but we'll give it another minute or so for questions. But I also want to take this opportunity, maybe while you're thinking of questions, to do one of our giveaways. So as a reminder, we have tons of giveaways for our meetup group today. StackRox is offering 3 different KubeCon passes for KubeCon North America next week. And a reminder to go to our free panel email events as well. So you can subscribe just to this channel because they're all going to be on YouTube Live. So easy. So Tam is going to give away those 3 passes, and I'm going to have her give those away over email because you all registered on Zoom. We want to utilize, we have that information. So she's going to pick the winners from that and email you if you want a KubeCon pass. But for the $100 gift card, I want to do something a little different. Please add a +1 to the chat and you are entered. So we're going to give it another minute or so and you have to +1 the chat right now. And then you are entered for the Amazon gift card. Maybe only like one person's going to do it. And then you're the winner.
Can I
so I want to reward the people that are here. What'd you say, Victor?
Can I participate or I'm excluded?
No, you're excluded.
That's unfair.
And I think it is just taking I can't imagine no one has +1 the chat yet. There they are. They like all came through at once for us. The chat just takes a minute to come through. Oh, I have a lot of entries here. Do we have any questions for Victor while I count these and go do a random number generator? Oh, I got another +1.
Subscribe to the channel, YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe to our channel. We're doing a lot more things on YouTube Live these days. I'm really enjoying it, and I hope you guys are too. And we'll have, like I said, those 3 different expert panels next week. We're calling them the hallway track because that's kind of what we're missing from going to live conferences, right? Is that kind of hallway side conversations. But we'll have, talking about all the best things that happen during the day at KubeCon. So in case you can't go to KubeCon, then this is a great way to catch up also. Okay, I got a bunch of +1s here. Victor, please entertain the audience while I tabulate. Was that a dance? Oh. Okay, random number generating. Okay, my winner is Dylan Gregerson. Dylan, you won a $100 Amazon gift card. Who's not using Amazon gift cards right now? Like, that's how I buy everything. Well, congratulations, Dylan. Like I said, you all are still winners because you all get a free CodeFresh account. So if you haven't opened up a CodeFresh account yet, it's totally free. Go sign up. And you still have 3 more chances to win KubeCon passes. And so look out in your email for those. And Tam will send that to you via email. Yay, congratulations, Dylan. You're welcome. So if we don't have any other comments, then we'll close out this meetup. Again, I appreciate you guys being flexible and switching over to this live stream for us. Let us know what you like better. It sounds like, this is why it's hard for us to decide too. There are good parts of Zoom and then there are good parts of YouTube Live. So we want to hear from you and hear which one you prefer as well. All right, any closing words, Victor?
Keep on. I don't know. I'm bad at stuff. Motivational speeches.
No problem. Well, yeah, thank you everyone for joining us. We'll see you hopefully next week on CodeFresh Live. Thanks again to StackRox, and we'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.
Cheers.